friends and family. Visit InfoWarsNews.com today. Become a member, share your membership, and help take the InfoWar to the next level.
Using unparalleled research in the development of a synergistic formulation based around the key concepts of super oxygenation, the next level in cleansing is here. With key ingredients backed by real clinical studies, the new Oxy powder, available through InfoWars Life, was invented during Dr. Group's research on the toxification of our bodies. Many herbal colon cleansers are harsh on the body and contain cheap and potentially dangerous ingredients, oftentimes full of synthetic fillers, GMOs, additives, or worse. Gently start cleaning your body with easy capsules that start working while you sleep. Oxy powder does not require time off work, and there's no need for bad-tasting concoctions. Instead, Oxy powder slowly releases monoatomic oxygen into the intestinal tract and body. Experience the astonishing cleansing power of superoxide and ozonide technology. Go to InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com to get started with Oxy powder, or call 1-888-253-3139.
Open your eyes. It's time to give your eyes a powerful nutritional boost. Sight is the primary input to the brain, arguably making eyesight the most important sense we have. And just like the other important organs in our bodies, our eyes function at peak levels when they are fed the proper amounts of essential nutrition. Open your eyes. Combining key ingredients like vitamin A, zinc, lutein, proprietary saffron bulb extracts, and more, OcuPower by InfoWars Life is a new formulation specifically designed to nutritionally assist the natural function of healthy eyes. Optimize the natural power of your eyes with the latest addition to the super high-quality InfoWars Life formulations, OcuPower. Go to InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com to order OcuPower, or call 1-888-253-3139. OcuPower. Open your eyes.
Coast to coast, direct from Austin. You're listening to the Alex Jones Broadcasting Network.
Waging war on corruption. It's Alex Jones.
It's the Alex Jones Show Sunday edition with me, Paul Joseph Watson, and David Knight. We're going to go to this CBS News clip where Obama gave some very interesting comments today regarding ISIS. He basically acknowledged that the growth of ISIS in Syria and Iraq came about as a result of the destabilization of Syria, which of course was a direct result of the US arming the moderate rebels against the Assad government. Obama didn't admit that in his quote, but he certainly went kind of a limited hangout some part of the way to acknowledging that situation. So here's the clip from CBS News.
End up where they are in control of so much territory. Was that a complete surprise to you?
Well, I think our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria. Essentially what happened with ISIL was that you had Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which was a vicious group, but our Marines were able to quash with the help of Sunni tribes. They went back underground. But over the past couple of years, during the chaos of the Syrian civil war, where essentially you have huge swaths of the country that are completely ungoverned, they were able to reconstitute themselves and take advantage of that chaos and attract foreign fighters who believed in their jihadist nonsense and traveled everywhere from Europe to the United States to Australia to other parts of the Muslim world, converging on Syria. And so this became ground zero for jihadists around the world. And they've been very savvy in terms of their social media. In some cases, you have old remnants of Saddam Hussein's military that had been expunged from the Iraqi military, which gave them some traditional military capacity and not just terrorist capacity. And this is one of the challenges that we're going to have generally is where you've got states that are failing or in the midst of civil war, these kinds of organizations thrive. That's why it's so important for us to recognize part of our solution here is going to be military. We just have to push them back and shrink their space and go after.
Obama is basically acknowledging that with the rise of jihadists, destabilization in Syria, of course in Libya as well, that's where terrorists thrive. But of course we know in Libya, they armed the jihadists. I mean, look at Libya now. It's a complete failed state. Drug lords, gangs of terrorist militants are running the country. You know, black people are locked up in concentration camps as a direct result of US airstrikes on Libya in 2011. We're seeing that same process again unfolding in Syria. So, you know, they destabilized the governments of Assad, of Gaddafi, the secular, mainly moderate, of course. They were proxy dictatorships in a sense, but there were no mass terrorist attacks, destabilization campaigns in Libya, in Syria, before the United States, the United Kingdom, and the NATO countries started arming these jihadist rebels. So Obama talks about, quote, jihadist nonsense in this CBS interview. They funded, they bankrolled, they armed the jihadist nonsense to begin with. The terrorists from Libya crossed into Syria to start that destabilization campaign. So I thought that it was interesting that, you know, he goes some way to acknowledging that the primary cause of the growth of ISIS was the destabilization of these countries, without admitting to the fact that it was the United States foreign policy in alignment with NATO, which was a deliberate attempt to create that destabilization in the first place, which of course led to Syria, led to the growth of ISIS, led to Benghazi, and basically this jihadist control over the region. David Knight.
I thought it was interesting that he's talking about jihadists from around the world. Just as I had mentioned, they were trying to sell the narrative about a month ago that there were 300 Americans that had gone over there to fight. Turns out it's not even that. Now they're admitting the FBI is saying maybe 12. That's hardly an international movement that we need to be concerned about. But it really shows, just look at the last couple of years. As we've been pointing out, the fake sarin gas attacks that they had a year ago, trying to lay that solely on the Syrian administration. And then earlier than that, there had been some other sarin gas attacks. And you had, after we were pointing out that there were reports that it was done by the Saudis, or reports that it was not from Assad. And there were reports that back earlier in the spring, it had been a homegrown sarin gas. And of course, they were trying to sell the narrative that only the Assad regime could have sarin gas. And at that point, you had even the American military join with UN inspectors and with Russian inspectors and saying, yeah, they do have the capability to do sarin gas. So that whole thing fizzled away, but they've looked for every kind of excuse they can to provoke an involvement of American forces in Syria, because their ultimate goal, as we've been told for a long time, is to take down the Syrian regime. That's one of the regimes on the list to be taken down.
And that's what the Saudi prince, Wesley Clark, the 7 countries to be taken down in the aftermath of 9/11, that's what the Saudi prince admitted earlier. The ultimate agenda behind targeting ISIS is to affect regime change in Syria, so that's now an open secret. We're going to switch now in the last 4 or 5 minutes in this segment to this foreign affairs piece, which of course is the publication of the CFR. It's the conversations that the elite are having with each other. You can see it here, the American distemper when polarization confronts the United States, Madisonian check and balance political system. The result is devastating. And what this article is about, it's a 9-10 page article, amidst a selection of other articles. It's basically almost half of the magazine for this September-October edition, is about the blind panic that the elite finds itself in as a result of the growth of the distemper, as they call it, the populist uprising. There you see it on the CFR website, America in Decay, the sources of political dysfunction. And it's talking about how they need to, here's a quote directly from the article, leaders must learn to co-opt, that's the key phrase, and channel popular passions, addressing political outsiders' legitimate grievances while bypassing their simplistic solutions. So they admit that this populist uprising, which mainly focuses on the decline in living standards in both the United States and Europe over the past 25 years, and the crisis in national identity as a result of mass immigration. It's a genuine issue. It's a legitimate concern that many people have. But what their solution to it is not to actually address the problem itself, but to hijack, to co-opt those populist uprisings endemic within the Tea Party, the UK Independence Party in the United Kingdom, and numerous other parties throughout Europe, the True Finn Party in Finland, Marine Le Pen in France, and several others. They need to hijack that. They need to divert it into separate channels so it gets shut down, so it gets closeted away, so nobody actually faces up to the problem. And it's amazing that they're admitting this. David Knight, how does this tie into what you've been researching earlier? We mentioned Catalonia and the wave of populist rebellion against the establishment system throughout Europe and the US.
Oh, yeah. A lot of small countries are wanting to basically take back their self-governance. We see this happening throughout Europe. There's pockets of it happening in America. We see dissatisfaction out in California, for example. Some of the counties there want to secede from the state of California because they have a different view of a lot of different issues, whether it's gun control or other issues. So this is something that is definitely happening, but we all need to remember that this is really kind of what they're talking about here is essentially like the COINTEL programs that we've seen in the past, where they go in and they take over any and every movement. They may come in and have some people who try to turn it into a violent movement. If it's a peaceful movement, they may come in and actually provoke things as agent provocateurs. We've seen that happen over and over again in the past. Or they may do what David Cameron did earlier, and that is they just come in and say, we're going to resort to outright censorship. We're going to shut you down that way. So they don't ever put all their eggs in one basket. They don't count on being able to completely shut people down. They want to also be able to covertly take over these movements, make them look bad, or completely take over the leadership of them.
We'll get into it more after the break. We're going to take your calls, 877-789-2539. That's 877-789-2539. It's the Alex Jones Show, this Sunday edition. We'll be back after the break. Infowars.com. Stay tuned.